Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. We are tenure-track faculty members in the sciences, working at a primarily undergraduate university in California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss.
Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Hi, I'm Ruth.
And I'm Claire. And today we're going to talk about virtual teaching, part 2. But first, Ruth, how was your week?
My week is going okay. Our house is kind of in some chaos because we are slowly coming to terms. I say coming to terms, but not really, but with the fact that the kids are probably not going back to school. So we are trying to make a sort of area that's a bit more schoolish for them.
Oh, I see. Good idea.
Eric is making some shelves and we're gonna have where we can have all their school stuff and it's a little less chaotic. So that, I think the payoff will be huge, but right now it feels a little like bedlam because there's stuff everywhere.
Totally. Yeah. And it's always when you rearrange, all these things get displaced and you have to figure out where they go, and sure. But it's going to be awesome, I'm sure.
I think it will, and I think it'll be good for them and us to have, everyone, there's a kind of among a lot of other parents in that school, people are sort of low level hysteria freaking out. So I think somehow this makes me feel like we're having some control over it, even if it is just maybe not true, but it feels like it is.
Well, I've heard a lot of advice about if you're working in, one space, having different parts of the space be designated for different things can be really helpful. So it seems like you're kind of doing that with the school zone, and this zone is for school. Seems like it might be helpful when you're in the same house all the time.
Totally. And I think they're, because they have started to be like, we're just always here. And it's like, oh yeah, you are. So there will be, even if it is only come over to this corner of the room, it'll be going to school. And so.
Totally.
Well, I set up a desk in my room and I can't believe how much it helped me to be like, I am standing at my desk. That means I'm working right now. And it really changed from I'm perching on the edge of the couch, or perhaps I'm at the kitchen table, or maybe I'm sitting in the hallway, or wherever weird places I was working before. So having a spot is helpful for sure.
Yeah. This is interesting. So my thing about my week is I've been re-establishing my email once a day thing, which I always do, and I'm always like, this is awesome, and then I always just say, oh, but what if I just check my email right now, and then I kind of slide out of it. But anyway, email once a day is still awesome, and I'm back to doing it. Highly recommend.
And has the world fallen apart? And did you lose your job or something?
Fallen apart. My job's still here. Nothing exploded. It's just been fine. And way more efficient, You go and you deal with the 10 emails, and then you're done. Or however many emails,
I'm going to have to try it because you're saying this to me and I sort of believe you, but in my heart I feel this panic and dread of
oh, I know.
What do you mean? So, but I believe you.
And I really have a habit of just opening my phone and checking my email. So I'll be open the phone, don't click the icon, So that's a phase to get through with the email once a day. But yeah, still
Do you know what's helping me is that my phone has been just slowly dying over the last year and a half. And it's really slow, but I feel like I'm locked in this battle of wills with the manufacturer of the phone where I'm like, I'm not getting a new one. You're not going to win. But it kind of works because sometimes it takes so long for things to load. I recognize I just pressed that button for email and I shouldn't.
I don't actually want it to load. Interesting.
Yeah, so take that phone. You're actually making me less addicted to you. So
yeah. Huh.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about virtual teaching, and I have a quote kind of, I don't know, not quite what we normally do, but it fits with virtual teaching. So, do you believe that my being stronger or faster has anything to do with my muscles in this place? You think that's air you're breathing now? And this is Morpheus from The Matrix, which I actually haven't seen, but I've heard a lot about it.
Oh my God, Claire, you need to we should stop recording right now and you should go and take care of that. But okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I feel a little like I shouldn't be quoting something I haven't seen. But on the other hand, it's such a good match because I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to give a realistic experience despite it being virtual. which they did very well in The Matrix. So
Are we pro? Like, is it
we're
the
not
overlords?
trying to repeat The Matrix, but we're trying to take some elements from it.
Oh my god, I'm just gonna like go off on a whole Matrix thing, but I think that's appropriate because Morpheus was like a professor.
Yeah, and
You know,
totally a
so I
mentor.
totally, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
I am. I do this like physics activity with the students that is like a video clip from the Matrix,
Uh-huh. Oh,
and we
really?
calculate some stuff. I mean, not real stuff because it's the Matrix, but and I'm always like, this is. They're just like, what is this old timey movie you're showing us? And I'm like, excuse me, this is like the most like cutting edge. But I had a very profound experience with the Matrix
Oh,
because
yeah?
I went to see it in the cinema, like not really knowing it was going to be a big thing. Like I was just like, okay, we'll go see this movie, and I feel like I literally, like my mind was blown. I was just like, what is this thing? So I have a deep connection with the Matrix.
Cool. I love seeing movies or reading books when you don't know all the context that's,
Oh,
that it's
totally.
going to blow up and be this huge thing, or you just haven't heard that it blew up and became this huge thing. That's always extra fun.
Totally. You don't have any expectations going in, and you're just
Yeah.
like, what is happening? So yeah, I'm very excited. Okay, I can't wait to hear in the future what you think of the Matrix.
Okay, cool.
When your mind
I'll
is
report
blown.
back.
It'll be very exciting. Cool.
All right, so virtual teaching, we felt like this warranted a part 2 because we've been spending a lot of time thinking about virtual teaching, and so have a lot of people. So, yeah, we've been thinking this summer, you're fully virtual, right, Ruth, this fall?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm mostly virtual, but I do have, the plan is for us to have a face-to-face lab class with, half capacity and only for a 7-week time frame, so they have time for quarantining before and after. So that's the plan. But the lectures will all be virtual. So anyway, that's the context we're coming from, and we hope that it's helpful for some listeners as they're thinking about virtual teaching potentially too.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we recorded our earlier episode, I was like, we should do one at the end of the summer when we have this all figured out. So that is not quite what this is, but just further musings.
Thinking. Yeah. So yeah, what do you want to start? What's working for you with virtual teaching at this point?
Yeah, so I this summer I did a course in the Center for Teaching and Learning that's on our campus, and it was online, and it was super interesting. First of all, to take an online course, which like I haven't done before.
That's
so
really good perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized like I never read anything. And like I'm always like, hey, so where's this information? And the person who facilitated it is like, she could be canonized as a saint because she's the most patient. She's like, oh, good question, Ruth. It's just right on that page where everything else is. But she's super patient and nice about
Okay,
it. But
good. That's good
I get
to know.
so frustrated with my students where I'm like, why don't they realize there's a quiz today when like here I am not paying attention to anything? So that's interesting.
Good point.
And one thing that they talked a lot about, Kim Vincent Layton works at the Center for Teaching and Learning, and she was my instructor, and she has written a paper that's about humanizing online teaching.
Oh, cool.
And she takes it to the max, like really does a great job of that. And so that's what I've been thinking a lot about. And do you remember like a long time ago, like I'm sure for people who haven't heard it, but we did an episode about starting this semester, and I do an activity with them in a discussion forum where they talk to each other, and it's kind of cringeable, but it works, where like they have to share 3 photos and all that sort of stuff. And like I sort of do that, but I don't always feel super confident. Like I'm really worried about getting pushback.
Yeah.
And this course made me feel like I have permission to do those kind of slightly cheesier things.
Sure.
To try and create some community. And so I have 2 assignments that I want to start with. One is the usual one in the discussion forum where students will introduce themselves and share their photos. And then the other one I wanted to do was like a flip grid, which it's going to take me a bit to figure out how to do that. But to get everybody to post, like you can only do 2-minute videos, and to get everyone to post what's something that you learned from taking online courses before, about taking online courses. And so I feel a little bit more okay about trying to build some of the community in the classroom. And so, because I feel like I'm always going to get like, this isn't physics. Why are you asking us these stupid
Mm-hmm.
questions? That kind of thing. And so I think, but when we're not going to have in person stuff, maybe we just have to do the slightly cheesy.
Slightly cheesy.
Hmm.
So what kinds of things made you feel more comfortable with doing the slightly cheesy things? Were you doing the slightly cheesy introductions in this class,
Yeah,
or
in
how did
this
it
class,
work?
she did a lot of, like, she did so many things that, like, I definitely want to do. Like, one thing she talked about, and I think I'm going to try and do this, is short videos about your syllabus. So I think
Okay.
I'm going to do that. And then she had, like, a lot of icebreaker stuff the first week. Like, we had
Mm-hmm.
to do stuff. And then she had, like, just stuff about the content, but we answered it through Flipgrid,
Okay.
like, using those videos. And that was super cool. And she would do, like, a video at the beginning of every week being like, hey, everyone, here's a reflection of what we did last week, and here's what we're
Interesting.
going to
Oh, that's a
do.
good idea.
And, like, all the reminders about, don't forget, Wednesday's the day when you need to post blah, blah, blah. And so doing that kind of stuff, and even just having a welcome video, like, that was one of our assignments that we had,
To
to make
make
a
a welcome
welcome
video
video.
for your class. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think I feel a little bit more like, it's certainly stuff I've seen people do and being like, that's cool, but kind of hearing, and then also seeing the faculty discussions about what other people were going to do, and realizing, like, oh, hey, a whole bunch of people are going to do this, and it's not going to be this weird abnormal thing.
Right. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
So
how
I'm
did the
into that.
Flipgrid videos work from your end as a student? You recorded a 2-minute thing and posted it, or what?
Yeah, and it was, again, being like technophobic and not very good at, using new technology, but it was this app, and you just clicked like a plus, and then you recorded your video, and you could check it, and then you could upload it,
I
and
see.
that was
So
it.
pretty simple. That's good.
Hmm. And then you could just see everyone else's, and then there was, like, a part of the assignment was you had to reply to two other people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about what they said and stuff. So I think one of the assignments I made up as part of the course too was, I think, did we talk about, we talked about before labs, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a lot of anxiety about labs. So
Mm-hmm.
this assignment will be, like, you have to kind of share what was your favorite lab and why, and then you have to
Mm-hmm.
comment on each other's and
That
that
makes
sort of
sense.
stuff.
Cool.
So yeah, so
Well, I
that's
like it.
that's the stuff I'm kind of excited about, but haven't done any of it yet. But anyway, you never
Yeah.
know. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll all get done. But how about you? What's working for you?
For me, I'm thinking a lot about communication with the students, and in
Hmm.
particular, enhanced communication with the students. So, usually, I send out 2 emails in the summer that are pre-class emails, where I say, this is the textbook, and if you get it early in the summer, it's cheaper. And I tell them about the online homework that they have to purchase, and it's easier if they purchase it before they have to actually start working on homework. So I send out a couple emails, usually in the summer. But this summer, I sent out an email explaining how the class will work, because it was less obvious how the class would work. And then I got a few questions back, so then I sent a more thorough email to everybody explaining how it would work. And then I got a thank you email saying thanks for keeping them updated with what's going on. So anyway, I'm seeing all this as an example of the need for enhanced
Oh yeah.
um, communication in this situation. Since there are so many different ways that people can choose to set up virtual classes, and since it's so unfamiliar to everyone, I think the extra communication is helpful. So I'm going to try to remember that throughout the semester. And your thought of having a video at the beginning of each week, like Kim Vincent Layton did, with reminders and
Yeah.
check-ins and stuff, that seems like really a good
And
way
a
to
couple
do
of
that.
times she actually just did audio.
Oh,
Like, she
cool.
just had, like, an audio file of, like, hey everyone, and yeah.
That's great, because at the beginning of every lecture, I normally say, "Hey guys, remember that these things are due, and the exam's in 2 weeks or whatever." And it's I like the idea of having that be a separate short video that you can just check real quick, instead of having it be, well, I don't know, maybe in addition to having it be the normal lecture.
Well, and that's something that I had kind of, so, like, I'm going to record little video snippets of the
Mhm.
material that they're going to watch separately. But that's the thing I was, like, kind of worrying about, because I want to make those relatively robust, as in I could use them next semester, and
Uh
it's
huh.
not going to be super like, oh, remember last Thursday when I talked to you guys, or that stuff.
Uh
So,
huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but then I was kind of like, oh, that leaves out all of that stuff. So maybe this weekly update thing could be where
Yeah.
that other stuff goes.
I think that's a great idea. Because that's I'm feeling the same way of like, I like the idea of the videos being reusable, but I'm finding a conflict of I like to make them personal and therefore
Yeah.
refer to things that are happening right now. Just like, your exam yesterday or, that kind of thing.
Oh, totally.
But this is a good way, a good balance for that. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I'm into that. That's cool.
The other thing that's working is the break. Oh, were you going to say something else?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to highlight the breakout rooms on Zoom for using group work in class. And I'm planning to use that heavily. I used that last semester, but I'm planning to use it even more this semester for the student-to-student interaction, which I think is so important to intentionally foster this semester when they're not going to be sitting next to each other and walking into the class and out of the class with each other. And it's also active learning, and it's kind of like how I normally teach with just like, okay, now talk amongst yourselves for a second about this topic, and then we'll come back, So I feel like it fits really well with making it seem more like you're in the classroom,
Totally. Okay, I have 2 questions.
Uh-huh.
One is, how are you going to choose the groups? And then 2 is, when I did the breakout groups in Zoom, every week I would set them up, and then every week during the thing, it wouldn't put the people...
Oh, really?
Like, it would sort of reset somehow. But I don't know if I was just doing something wrong.
Those are great questions. So far, I have only done random breakout rooms, but I know you can... sort them in advance and have them go. But I don't know the technical things of how to make that work, but I'll figure that out at some point soon. How to make the groups, that is a huge question that I am really interested in learning more about how to do that. And I feel like at first I might make them random because I don't really know the students, but then it would be nice to have some variety of comfort with the material in each group.
Totally.
And then it's also important to consider minoritized people, and you wouldn't necessarily want to have just one minoritized person in a group. It might be better to have a couple.
Totally.
In general, I don't like to put friends together just because then that's they're probably going to work together anyway outside the class, and that kind of I worry that it throws off the group dynamic to have a couple friends in the group. On the other hand, in this case, when they're not necessarily sitting next to their friends normally, I'm not sure that might change my methods a little bit. So, yeah, I have lots of thoughts about group work, but not really a good answer of exactly how
I
to
feel
do
like
it.
you've just verbalized a lot of my thoughts. Where I'm like, on one hand this, but then this and that. Yeah.
So what I'm planning to do right now is come up with some groups, keep them for maybe a month, so that I like to have the groups be the same for a while so that they can get a good group dynamic going and be comfortable with each other. But if there's a problem, I don't want that to go the whole semester. So I'm thinking about changing them every month. That's what I'm currently doing to try to balance those.
We should do an episode about group work.
We totally should. Dude, I'm so interested in figuring this out.
The reason I haven't really... Because I just don't know. And I feel like I've read and seen so many things that all say opposite things about what's a healthy, good group. And the biggest question I have is just, like, if you have a person who has been an issue, who do you inflict them on next? Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to switch the groups around and somebody is difficult to work with, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a chance, obviously, maybe they won't be difficult in a different group.
Yeah. And you can also talk to the person and try to show them the benefits of working in the group if that's the problem.
Yeah,
but
my face
I know
is
that
going
is a
red
challenge.
imagining that conversation.
I know.
But yeah, oh God, Claire, can you do that for me?
Well, we'll have a whole episode about groups. That's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, I had 2 more things I wanted to say about that. I often hear a complaint about the breakout rooms and how there's a time sink to get in and out of the breakout rooms, and that's totally true. But my thought is, normally it takes me a good 2 minutes of waving my arms around frantically to get everybody back into the main group anyway. So on the Zoom, at least you say, end the breakout rooms, and they're gone. So,
yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. I haven't tested it enough to tell whether it's actually a time sink for me, but I definitely waste a lot of time waving my arms around like a maniac,
trying to
which
get
is fun.
everyone.
But
I know, it's like there is this tipping point where you're like, woohoo, they're all talking so much, and then you're like, okay, actually they're just talking too much.
okay,
And,
but
like,
really,
yeah, like can we just like go back to me being in charge? And yeah,
I know.
but
Okay, and the last thing I wanted to say about this was I did try this cool other program that's not Zoom at a conference I went to recently called GatherTown. If you go to
oh,
gather.town. Have you tried this, Ruth?
it was actually at the AAPT
Oh,
conference.
there you go. So yeah, so in this virtual world, you're a little avatar and you walk around a room, and whenever you walk next to someone else's avatar, you can see everyone's avatars. You're like, bird's eye view of the room. Whenever you walk next to someone else's avatar, you are instantly in a video chat with them, and it could be however many people. And so that's got a lot of potential, I think, for group work. It's got a lot of potential for conferences, poster sessions. But yeah, I think it could work really well for group work. And then you as the instructor can walk around physically as your little avatar to the different groups. So anyway, I wanted to throw that out there as a potential useful tool.
That does sound super useful, and it was. I did it in the conference. Like they had like a coffee lounge, and you could
Yeah,
go in there, and it was still kind of mortifying though when you
it's
go up and
just
just lurk. And like I was like, maybe it won't be embarrassing when it's virtual. It's like, oh no,
it
it's
was
still
pretty
weird.
much the same as
Yeah,
as in person for me.
yeah, yeah. But you could just run away without having
Right.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was good
that's
too.
true.
Cool. Okay, I love all of those.
Cool. Okay, so what are you working on with virtual teaching?
Oh, dude. Just everything. I mean, part of like I sort of wrote this in both columns of working on and working like well. And like one
Okay.
of the things is like this is a really good opportunity to revisit a lot of things and think
It
about like why
is.
do I do that lab? Like is that necessary or
Uh-huh.
that stuff? But then that in itself is kind of overwhelming
It
too.
is.
Like
Because
it's
then you
hard
just
to
throw
know.
everything out and
I know. It's like the Matrix. You're like, what's real? I don't even know anymore. So, like, yeah, totally. And I think, okay, one thing I'm really struggling with is time commitments
Okay.
and what I'm asking of the students, like, feels intense.
Okay.
But it's weird because this class I'm teaching, we would have normally been together 7 hours a week
Mm-hmm.
if we were like really in person. And now we're going to meet for like, probably 90 minutes to 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
once a week. And so I'm asking them to do a lot of stuff. Like, so I want to ask them to watch the lecture videos and then do some kind of quiz to sort of demonstrate that they watch the videos.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're going to have homework due every week. They're going to have a lab every second week. They're going to have a problem solving quiz. They might have a reading reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like a lot.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. And I think something, as we all know, if you've listened to the podcast before, like I really want there to be rules and I
Yeah.
just want there to be X amount of work or,
Right.
and so, yeah, so I think I'm going to try and be quite clear in talking to them about it and saying, my job here is to really prepare you as well as I can for the future classes you're going to take while also trying to be aware of like life stuff happening.
Yeah.
But we still have to get this stuff done. So I think I'm wondering, am I asking too much? And then another thing I'm frustrated about is like, why didn't I either start this preparation earlier or acknowledge that I wasn't going to start it and just take a real break and not have delusions that I was going to do it? Do you know what I mean?
That's like the story of every weekend, you have to decide you're going to take a break
I
or
know.
or not. I know what you mean.
Yeah, because here we are and we don't have that much time. And it's like, I have been thinking I was about to start preparing materials like any minute now for like a good month. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
I mean,
what
it sounds
about,
like you've
oh,
thought about it a lot, and I really like your ideas of telling them explicitly why you're doing what you're doing. You're not just trying to be a pain, you're trying to prepare them, and you have been very intentional about selecting what to do based on that. And so I think the more explicitly you explain that, hopefully the better they'll be on board with the variety of tasks.
yeah. It feels like so much to
Yeah.
ask them to do every week. But then I'm trying to remember this is replacing class time. Like, it's not like
Mm-hmm.
I'm suddenly, you know,
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
instead of coming to lab for 3 hours, they're going to do this thing, which,
Right.
I mean, even if it takes them 3 hours, that's the same amount of time.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, I think as long as you're confident that all these things are worth doing and are replacing, that they're, as long as you're being intentional that these are really the things that they should be doing for the class, then I think you're good.
Yeah. 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 Sorry, that's like I'm just like gazing at you with like despair in my face. But anyway, what are
I'm
you
sure
working
you'll
on?
do good. I'm working on testing.
Oh, dude.
Which for me right now with my class is wide open. I normally do individual exams, and so I could do individual exams like normal. I think for my class that would take the format of them working out the exams by hand and then taking pictures and just uploading their work, because the problems they do for my class doesn't really work well with typing. So that's totally an option. But it just feels a little weird for them to be taking a test alone at home. It's so tempting to cheat in that situation. And anyway, I'm just kind of rethinking it and wondering what the best things to do are. So one approach I'm thinking about is this group test approach that I read about in an article by Tom Wenzel that I'll link. And he
cool.
described his system for doing a test where the students first do the test by themselves and, honor code by themselves without resources. Then they submit their own test. Then you all get on this group Zoom call, and they got in their normal groups, and they each group had a portion of the exam that was assigned to them. And as a group, they came to consensus about the answers to those problems in their section of the exam. And then you bring the whole class together, and you go through the whole test, and each group reports out what they think the answers are for theirs, and the class comes to a consensus. And so in that case, the things that I really like about it is that the test becomes really a learning experience. Somebody says, oh, I think it's this way. You have to think about that. You're like, oh, maybe it's this way. Tom Wenzel mentioned there were a few times where a small minority convinced the whole class of an answer that was correct, or where, the group changed their mind about the right answer. And so yeah, I love how it becomes a learning experience, and it's very interactive. The only challenge that how to grade is one thing. You've got this group score and you've got the individual score, so you'd have to figure out some weighting system. And also it takes a lot of time. Like in the paper, he said it took 2 hours for the group portion, and he had a pretty small class. So that's a lot of time for exams. A lot of class time. So I'm trying to figure out how that would work. It could just be for the final, or I'm not really sure. But it does seem like it has a lot of value. So I'm considering how to do that.
Dude, this is so interesting. I'm super into this, and I'm super into hearing about the grading scheme. But one thing, this week I did like a small workshop that was run by Escala. I think I've talked on here about them, where they do like professional development opportunities for people working at Hispanic serving institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that they talked about was this kind of predominance in how we work in the individualistic sort of mindset, as opposed to collective. And like from an equity standpoint, like there is people who just thrive so much more when they're working together as a group, and the like motto kind of is like, we're all going to get across the finish line together. Like that's a lot more appealing than the kind of competitive individualistic, like,
sure,
so that's super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And you could make it shorter, of course, by having fewer problems. And so anyway, I'm thinking about that. At least for the final, I think that would be lovely, and maybe for all the tests. I'm not sure.
I love that.
Cool.
I think. But yeah, I feel like with the exams, it's a real... I'm really stumped about what to do about the exams. And I feel like I definitely don't want to go the route of... Apparently you can get this like software where it watches the person taking the test or something.
I prefer to go the route of saying, honor code, I trust you guys. And like putting the trust, like I'm trusting them, and they're going to hopefully find that motivating. And most of them, I'm sure, wouldn't cheat. But it's just so tempting if you're just sitting in your room alone struggling, you know? So I don't really want to put them in that position.
Yeah. I'm hearing about people doing a lot of like projects, like having part of it
Oh,
be a
sure.
project, but again, that's creativity to kind of, yeah,
And it depends what your learning goals are. You know, there's particular
yeah,
problems that I really want them to know how to do. So I want them to demonstrate that in some kind of timed setting. And that's my learning outcomes for this class,
yeah.
you know? But
But I
yeah, I mean,
think,
other ones might be great for group
yeah.
projects.
Okay, I'm super curious to see how this goes. This is
Yeah,
super
me
cool.
too.
Yeah. Well, I think like I mean that's the thing. This stuff is like it feels overwhelming to me, but honestly, in some ways, it kind of energizing because it's like, oh, what about this? What about that? And
Totally.
like it definitely is generative. Like it's like you kind of like, oh, I wonder could this work and that work? And
Totally.
yeah,
I love it.
daunting, but potential. There's potential there for cool
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A great time to try some things out.
And maybe virtual teaching part 3 will be when we're experts. And then we'll be like,
Yes, we'll be back when we
yes.
actually have tried these things.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
thanks, Ruth. This has been very
Thank
helpful.
you. That was awesome. And thanks, Ralph. Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people you know if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.